Hey, good day, everybody. Hi, I am Steve Farrell. I am a co-founder with Neale Donald Walsch of Humanities Team and the current executive director. And this is a special broadcast. Look who I've got here with me today. Neale, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, I thought there was somebody else really special. Oh, just me. Okay. Hi, everybody.
All right, and this is a live program. So if you're out on social media and you've got a question or comment for Neale, this is a shorter program. It's only about 30 minutes. So you're going to have to come in fairly early if you want us to try and get to your question. But we are here to talk about Neale's newest book, God Talk, which I am super excited about. Now, if you all probably know, Humanities Team was founded back in June 2003 by Neale. I helped him launch Humanities Team in June 2003, and it's all built around the Conversations with God books. You know, this God that is pure love. Wow. And this book, this brand new book, it just came out called God Talk by Neale, is fantastic. You'll hear from me in a moment why I love this book. But Neale, great job. Because and the thing that I'll just focus on as we're opening up this conversation is it's God Talk because it brings in other people's personal conversation where they talk about a particular incident in their life and where God kind of illuminated something, brought some awareness, some understanding, some expression through them. And then Neale comments on it. He sort of sets up the whole discussion at the beginning of the book, and then it goes into these conversations in the back of the book. And I love it because the big thing, of course, as we know, Humanities Team going back 20 years is so many people saying, I know that there's no separation, but I just help me connect with God, Neale, and that's what this book is about. Connecting
Yes,
with God where we're hearing their voice and their these incidents in the past that were important to them.
yes, it's amazing how that all came together, Steve. Most authors, and myself included, write a book, and then if they see if anybody wants to publish it. But in this case, this is the first time it ever happened in my life. I got a call from a publisher. I hadn't written a book. A publisher called me. This never happened before in my life, and I've written 39 books. But here's a publisher calling me out of the blue, and they said they got my number from my literary agent, and they called me at home one day and said, would you be willing to write a book explaining to people how they could have their own conversation with God? And I said, wow, I never thought about that particular topic. I mean, specifically in terms of a book, but if you want me to write one, I'll write one. So they said, great, write it as fast as you can. So I did. And then the publisher, went to the public on the internet and they asked the general public, if any of you have ever had an experience of divine intervention where you felt that God intervened in your life specifically and personally, please send us your story. And hundreds of people, they tell me, wrote into the publisher, sending their stories in. And the publisher took 7 or 8 of the best of those stories, the most interesting ones, and put them in the book as well. So the book contains my experience, how I had my first conversation with God, a little 6-step process that I think could help people move into their own connection with the divine. And then it includes those 7 stories of other ordinary folks, people who've had their own interaction with the divine. Fascinating to see how many people have had the same experience. And of course, as you know, Steve, Conversations with God, the book 1, made the statement. God said to me, Neale, I'm talking to everybody all the time. It's not a question of to whom do I talk. The question is who's listening. So what I've come to be aware of, Steve, is that everyone is having a conversation with God all the time. They're simply calling it something else because they don't want to be marginalized. They don't want to be ridiculed. And they don't want to be, ignored. So they use other phrases, women's intuition, it was an epiphany or a psychic hit or a brilliant idea that came to me in the shower. So, whatever they can say, whatever words they can use to describe the exact experience that I had. I simply called it Conversations with God because that's how it felt to me. But yes, we did put that book out. The book has just been published, and I'm really excited about it as you are, because it does bring to people an idea. It brings them an awareness that we can all have and are all having our own conversation with God, and we can do it consciously rather than subconsciously or unconsciously.
Yeah, amen. And I think that the day is in the not too distant future where this whole thing, woman's intuition, et cetera, is gone. I really do. And this whole new spirituality emerges on the earth, which was called out throughout the Conversations with God series, where we understand we're cells in the body of life. There's this superorganism universe, and we're all born into it. We're designed to be part of it. And of course, he is talking to us all the time. And boy, I just love that this book is just helping to sort of clear the path. It's like a big snowplow. We got this snowstorm and people can't get through. And this is a snowplow just clearing the path to that day where people are like, of course God's talking to. There's no separation, for God's sakes, which is, we spent 20 years, with this whole process, just talking, sharing stories, creating classes, global oneness summits, etc., and where people go, of course, and that day I believe is around the corner. And boy, Neale, you and Conversations with God, and again, just a picture of the book God Talk, have made this huge contribution that are ushering in that day and that era. And oh, thank God. Exciting.
I hope that people who get a hold of the book agree with you. It was my intention, of course, to make all that you've said real in the lives of everyone, that people say, you know what, this is important, and we have found a way that we can make a direct connection with the divine. Because as you know, Steve, that which we call God, those of us who believe in God, that would be 8 out of 10 of us. Surveys have shown that 8 out of 10 people hold a belief in some kind of higher power. And there's no separation between that higher power and who we are. That is, that higher power exists in every single sentient being in the cosmos, not just here on Earth. So we are part of it, and it is part of us. So of course we're having conversations. Every time you have a brilliant idea, a wonderful thought, or even an expression of love to anything. Anytime you have an expression and a feeling of love that flows through you, it's my understanding that that is God flowing through you.
It is. So, and let me just bring in too what's challenging in this. So Neale and I were just talking before coming on the program. Some of you may have seen these news items. Neale has got, this isn't easy stuff where you're that snowplow, so to speak, bringing out these new understandings of a God of pure love, where God isn't judging. This malevolent thing just isn't real. And sacred text down through the ages shares this is true. Conversations with God really brings it together in such a beautiful way. You can't miss it. But I'll tell you, there are 100,000 people complaining in around this country that Conversations with God for Teens is saying things about a loving God, and that as teens we can know that there's a loving God, and people their basic essence is love, and so on. And you're going to take fire when you come out with statements like that. Isn't it interesting? You have to take fire for statements like this. And so God bless you,
It's not
Neale.
only interesting, Steve, but it is understandable. I don't want to pretend that I don't understand how people can hold a different point of view. Nobody disagrees. Nobody says that God is not love. Everyone agrees that God is love. But it's fair for people to say that there are statements in the Conversations with God books, and there are certainly statements in the book Conversations with God for Teens that are other than and that diverge from the statements that are found in the Bible. And that's where you get 100,000 people commenting on the internet, this book is anti-biblical. I can see how some people could feel that way because there are statements that are different from or that diverge from these statements that are found in certain passages of the Bible. But you know what? I think it's the job of thinking people everywhere to take a look at all the literature that's been put in front of humanity, including the Holy Bible, which, by the way, has tons and tons and tons of wonderful insights and great wisdom. and statements of enormous love. No one questions that the Bible is one of the most important books ever written, if not the most single most important book ever written. But if we don't have the ability, if we don't have the freedom, I mean the intellectual and yes, even the spiritual freedom to disagree with certain statements in the Bible and to diverge from some of those statements here and there, if we don't have that kind of freedom, then the God that the Bible speaks of is not a real God, because the God that the Bible speaks of is a God that loves all of us all the time and actually encourages us to question and even sometimes to disagree with what certain people say that the Bible is telling us. So, let's all be on the side of agreeing, and let's all be on the side of disagreeing agreeably.
Yeah, amen to that. So we're going to come back to God Talk, but I want to just say, Humanities Team, when it was launched there in 2003, it was launched as the Civil Rights Movement for the Soul. So these, and specifically that this God of our understanding that is malevolent, judging, all of these punishing, just not true. There was even a 5 steps to peace then that accompanied that back then. When the first step is that we open ourselves to new understandings about God and about life. Neale, so for me, this is like, I know you wouldn't like the comparison, but it's like, you're sort of the modern day John the Baptist or something, because I'm sure when John the Baptist was out so many years ago with these new understandings of a loving God and blessing and new covenant and all of these things, that was, this is heresy. What is this guy doing? And you've certainly seen that, in your lifetime with these books too. So I say thank you, for the important role you've played. But I'm going to come back over to God Talk here. I just wanted to enter that in here.
Well, George Bernard Shaw made this statement. I think he was accurate when he said it. All great truth begins as blasphemy. So anyone who, says something that runs counter to the established narrative on any particular topic, Galileo is a perfect example. I mean, Galileo had the nerve to suggest in 1615 that the earth revolved around the sun. And he was roundly condemned by the church. In those days, the Roman Catholic Church was probably the single most powerful social and institution in the world, social and spiritual institution. And they condemned Galileo. They put him under house arrest, actually. And he lived under house arrest for the rest of his life, demanding that he recant his idea that the earth revolved around the sun. Of course, the Catholic Church apologized in 1695, but no, it wasn't 1695. It was 1795. It took him 100 years. Yeah. But no, it wasn't 1795. It was 1895. It took him 200 years. But no, it wasn't 1895. It was 1995. Right. 350 years later, the Roman Catholic Church admitted that Galileo was right and it was wrong, and they rescinded the condemnation. Officially, the Pope officially rescinded the condemnation. One presumes that then Galileo was freed from hell and allowed to go to heaven because the Catholic Church said so. I'm not making fun of this. This is history.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up. This actually happened. So, but it did take the Catholic Church 350 years to acknowledge that Galileo was right. He was what I call an idea hero. He said something that he knew people would disagree with in large numbers, and he said it anyway. So, guys, what we need today are more idea heroes, people who will step forward and say, is it possible, just possible, that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about each other, the understanding of which would change everything. And that's what I hope that we can bring to the world with the book God Talk, is the invitation for all of us to become idea heroes, to say something that people have not dared to say so widely and so publicly. And here's the statement that we invite people to say: God is pure love. God needs, requires, wants, asks for, and certainly demands nothing in return for God's love. So God does not judge, condemn, or punish anyone for anything. There's no such place as hell. Now, that's theologically revolutionary. You got to understand that there are 4,000 religions, actually 4,223, but who's counting? Religions now being practiced on the face of the earth. I'm not saying from the beginning of time till now. I mean now, being practiced right now on the earth, over 4,000 religions. And what I've just said, that God does not judge, condemn, and punish anyone, runs counter to what most of those 4,000 religions say. Some religions tell us that you're going to hell if you don't wear certain kind of clothing, if you don't eat certain kind of food, or if you don't refrain from eating certain other kind of food. There are, I've learned that in the Jewish tradition, this is not to criticize anybody. I'm not criticizing Catholics or Jews or anybody else, just noticing, just observing. Jews tell us that there are over 1,600, I think it's 1,633 commandments that must be followed, that God has placed before humanity. Not 10 commandments, but 1,633 commandments, I'm told. So this is an opportunity for us to step forward and to take a look at, is it possible that there's something we don't fully understand here about who we are, about who God is, and about what God wants, and how we can use the power that's been inserted inside of it, all of us, every one of us, by the divine? And that's why I produced the book, God Talk.
Yeah, amen to that, God Talk. And just to connect that to today's world, because this Galileo moment thing is nothing more important than that in today's world. And the reason I say this, I think, what you just shared, Neale, is so clear. And two, connecting it to today's world, this whole microcosm, macrocosm. So as long as we think, oh, I'm separate from you, and I'm separate from the earth, and I'm separate from God, and it's just all about accumulating treasure and fame and fortune and power over others, well, you get the world, you get macrocosm, you get the world that's out there. But when one heals, was microcosm heals, oh, I'm not separate. Oh, and which, by the way, science is affirming, right? All over the place. Quantum physics it's being affirmed all over the place. This oneness thing that we're inside of this superorganism, this body, this universe. Or God, the divine, which is how we like to portray it in humanities team, and where we're designed that way, designed to be in service to the world around us, the spiritual universe. Well, that's a completely different way of living in the world, and it's the remedy. There's healing here. Microcosm gets well in a hurry when it understands that, and the world then, this whole sustainable flourishing thing happens in a hurry too, where you get to that 8 to 10%. So God Talk gets into this. It gets into it down at the microcosm level, where it's talking about my own story, my own life, where I've experienced this, how God's talking to me, how I'm expressing different out in the world, with this beautiful. The first half of the book from Neale, it's just saying, well, getting into things like, well, how do I know I know there's no separation, but I do kind of hear this, and then I hear that, and which one is God? And where Neale's saying, well, God is always these things. So where it's this other stuff, that's not God. God is these things. And so you've kind of put rails up here to help people sort of walk this path where we can deeply understand this oneness thing and how it works, and how that God's talking to us all the time in so many different ways. So yeah, I love the book, and it closes the loop on this thing that has been the greatest challenge over the years of, I got it, I love your messages, I believe the stories, the wisdom is there, but I don't understand how to do it myself. So this book, God Talk, closes the loop on that one of how I do it myself, and how I am many people around the world, how they are doing it, and Neale comes in and comments on their stories. Just a beautiful, beautiful book. Are there, Neale, as and you're doing lots of publicity, I know you're being called into 30, 40 different podcasts or something a week. Are there particular interest or interests or concerns from people as they're talking about this book?
Well, I think there's a particular interest for sure. Some people have had concerns as well. The concerns being, the concerns of anyone who reads a book like that. I hope it's true. I hope this is true. So that's the concern. The interest is that they're finding a six-step process in there that helps them go from where they are to where they would like to be. The first of those six steps, how we can have our own conversation with God, is what I call possibility. We have to acknowledge that it's possible to have a conversation with God. I don't mean to pray to God, but to have a two-way conversation. We talk, God talks, we talk, God talks. We have a two-way interaction with the divine. If we don't accept that that's even possible, then the discussion is over right then and there. So that's the first step in having our own connection with the divine. The second step is to realize that we are worthy, to have a sense of our worthiness, that, okay, maybe God does talk to certain people. God, talks to the Pope, perhaps, or to the Archbishop of Canterbury, or the chief ulama, or the head rabbi. But if you're not somebody really special or somebody really wonderful, God wouldn't talk to the average ordinary person. So the second step in the process is to embrace our own worthiness. Yes, God will talk to every single, and does, and is residing within, and therefore talking to and through every single person in the universe. The third step in our six-step process is willingness, that to be willing to, if we say, okay, I'm worthy, but to be willing to receive information from the divine, because most religions, again, those 4,000 religions teach us that if we go out to the world and say that we're willing to have God talk directly to us, not just that we pray to God, but that God speaks back to us. If we're willing to acknowledge that that is happening, and even willing for it to be happening, religion tells us that's blasphemy, that's apostasy, that's heresy, that's an ecclesiastical offense against God. So we have to be willing to overcome that idea of things and step into a new understanding of our relationship with the divine. The fourth step is wakefulness. Once we decide we're willing to receive that information, we must be awake to the fact that it's going on all the time. The chance utterance of a friend on the street that we just happen to run into, a conversation we overhear at the coffee shop, the words on the billboard as we turn the corner on the highway that just speak directly to us. And we can't even imagine how that message could have gotten there because we've been thinking about the same kind of thing. Or the lyrics of the next song you hear on the radio. So there are a million ways that God is communicating with us across 1,000 moments in 100 lifetimes. And these are just some of those ways. So wakefulness is step number 4, to be wide awake. And then step number 5 is acceptance. To not imagine that it's just a coincidence, or it's just my imagination, and we write it off. We just dismiss the information that we are receiving, the intuitive hit that we call, or the psychic hit, or women's intuition. We dismiss it, and we, rather than accepting it. So step number 5 is to accept what's happening and to accept the message that we've been given. And finally, step number 6 in that process is discernment, to be able to tell the difference, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, between messages from the divine and messages from other sources, including our own mind, which will bring us all sorts of weird and strange and distorted messages and distorted understandings if we're not careful. So, I go, of course, into these 6 steps much more deeply in the book. I just ran through them quickly for us here. But I want people to know that if they pick up the book, God Talk, I can lead them through a 6-step process that can get them from where they are to where they want to be. And where they want to be is in a more direct connection with the divine.
Yes, they do. And that's how we create the delicious life. We do programs on Wednesdays twice a day where there's a morning program, and during our morning program, we were sharing, even if the world wasn't in chaos and a mess and with dysfunction everywhere, we'd want to live this way anyway, because this is the delicious life where all of the things you're talking about, where of course God's talking, there's no separation. I'm an emanation of her, I'm her offspring. I'm her son that was sent here to this planet at this troubled time, and to live in my home and in peace and blessing and love and all of these things. So we'd want to do it for ourselves. And then the beautiful thing is then, it's an overflowing thing. It's an inside out job. So once this gets going, and we're out in our workplace and in the community and with our neighbor and wherever we might be, people are like, wow, I like that energy. Where's it come from? Well, God talk, living what this talks about, where of course we're worthy. My God, you're her son or daughter in the flesh. Does it get any more worthy than that? And we're here at this moment of this great shift of the ages, right? We're right in the middle of it. I love I've often shared, in that ninth book in your Conversations with God series, where God says the hardest part of this whole conscious journey is behind you. And it was like, wow, that's a revelation, and it's true. So we're well on our way, but it's our moment to really come into our own, to understand these things, those 6 steps that Neale laid out. And this book is an easy read. So some of the books in our transformational education space, this conscious living space, are admittedly a little heady. They can get a bit challenging to really get your arms around. This book is not like that at all. This is written for before you go to bed, you could enjoy just reading, several chapters, and it doesn't take you that long to get through it. And you get to the other side of the book, and we live into today's invitation. Why we were born in the world today, huh, Neale? Was to really come into the fullness of this, and where we, through books like this, we understand what this invitation is, how it works, and we kind of get our ladder against the right wall here.
I hope that's the experience that people have when they read it. I'm not arrogant about it. I don't assert that everything in the book is absolutely, profoundly, and completely 1,000% true. I think that it is, or I wouldn't have put it out, but I could be wrong. And I want to make that clear to everybody. I'm not sitting here thinking that I'm the authority in the universe on all subjects, least of all on the topic of God. But I do invite people, pick up the book and read it and see what you think. Be your own authority in all spiritual matters. If you pick up the book and you read it and you say, it's garbage, it's nonsense, throw it out, toss it away. If you pick up the book and you read it and it resonates with something inside of you that says, this feels like truth to me, then embrace it and step into the living of it. Millions of people throughout the world have done so with the Conversations with God dialogue books, and I hope that people will find the book God Talk to be valuable to them as well. And thank you, Steve, for being so affirmative and so positive in your reaction to what's inside that book. Between the 2 covers of that latest book, I'm excited to have been invited to write it, and I'm excited to know that some people who already had a chance to read it have found some value there. So thank you, my friend, for the opportunity to share with people what I've been experiencing these past 30 years.
Yeah, always a privilege and a pleasure, Neale. And let me thank Ariel Patricia, too. She's the publisher of this book. It's part of the Common Sentient series, which is the series itself is fabulous. And this book comes up near the end of the Common Sentient series. And boy, it's a real winner. So yeah, check it out. It's available, all the bookstores. So, hey, thank you all for being with us here today. There's this special broadcast. We don't do too many of these on Wednesday afternoons. Neale, just a total delight to be with you this afternoon, and love to you and him. We're going to stay in time integrity where we don't go over here today.
Thank you, my friend. It's been lovely to be here with you as well. And as I said a minute ago, I appreciate the opportunity to share with all of our friends this information in this brand new book. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. Yeah, we'll talk soon here. Love and peace and blessings here, Neale, to you and him. Yeah, and happy Thanksgiving to you here as we come up on next week in the U.S.
And
okay,
to
love
too.
to everybody. Thank you all for being with us. Go check out the book. Don't miss this one. A nice read for the Thanksgiving weekend. Okay, take care, everybody. Love and peace and blessings.
My friend.